Call of Duty has given us all a lot of unforgettable memories, and some of those memories revolve around our favorite guns to use in multiplayer. Some of them are unique to us, like my love of the MPL from Black Ops 1, but there are many weapons that everyone forgot about, or underrated, or somewhere in between. These guns weren't given a second thought, and that's why today we will be talking about the most overlooked weapons in every Call of Duty. What's the first gun that popped into your head that you think should be in the video? Starting off, COD 4, the G3. Semi-automatic weapons get overlooked all the time because they have a slightly bigger skill gap than full auto weapons without the satisfaction of being a one-shot kill like most snipers and shotguns. And this one had to go up against the M16 in its own weapon class, but the G3 had insanely high potential with it having a max fire rate of 1200 rounds per minute and very low recoil. And of course, no one's trigger finger could pull off anywhere close to 1200 rounds per minute, but you could fire it as fast as you wanted with no worries. And if you use stopping power, it lowered it to a 2-shot kill or even a 1-shot kill with a headshot, meaning theoretically, you could get the satisfaction of it being a 1-shot kill like a sniper, but with a much faster fire rate. So it could actually outduel the M16, but required precise aim. Regardless, the G3 was an extremely good weapon that didn't get enough shine. World at War, Type 100. It's an SMG, which probably makes you understand why it was overlooked in this game. The MP40 is probably the most overpowered sub in any Call of Duty ever, but to make it even worse, this game also had the PPSH, which had 0 recoil while firing it at 1250 rounds per minute. So that's 2 busted SMGs, but that's not all World at War had to offer. There's also the Drum Mag Thompson that almost everyone loved to use when they switched off the OP subs, which left the Type 100 in the corner all alone. It was a steady and solid weapon, but didn't have any feature that stood out. It had the most average fire rate at 750 rounds per minute and was 3 shots to kill. So for being a steady weapon, it got overlooked and every player went for the better looking or flashier SMG. Can you relate to the Type 100? If so, hit the like button in solidarity with the SMG that will always be there for you. MWIII. M1014. Shotguns in Modern Warfare 2 were secondaries, making people run them on most classes, but the Model 1887s were on every single class until they got nerfed. Then the SMAS 12, A12, and Striker overtook the secondary slot. But it wasn't just shotguns there, we also had machine pistols like the G18s and Rafikas that people loved. MWIII was the game of overpowered weapons, so some great weapons had to fade into the background, and I bet you completely forgot the M1014 was even in Modern Warfare 2, which has to feel bad when it could one-shot to 12.5 meters, which is very good for a shotgun. It was literally just a slightly worse SMAS 12 because it had slightly worse range, but identical damage with 8 pellets from each shot. So while it makes sense it wasn't the most used shotgun, it still got tossed to the side too easily. Hopefully you guys are remembering some of these weapons. Black Ops 1, the Enfield. This might be my most passionate defense of a weapon being overlooked on this list. So please listen up. I don't even like this weapon, but its name has been slandered over the years, being called a trash AR and way worse than the other assault rifles in this game. Black Ops 1 only had 2 different fire rates for fully automatic ARs in the game, at 937 rounds per minute for the FAMAS and AUG, and 750 rounds per minute for the Commando, AK-47, and Enfield. Then every single one of these weapons took 3 shots to kill at close range and 4 shots to kill at long range, and all but 2 of these weapons were listed as moderate recoil. Those 2 weapons with the low recoil were the FAMAS and Enfield. That's why the FAMAS was considered to be one of the best weapons in Call of Duty history until they nerfed it, giving it moderate recoil, meaning the only low recoil fully automatic assault rifle was the Enfield. So why was the Enfield considered so bad? It must have had terrible range on its 3-shot kill range to be viewed so poorly. Nope. Every single AR had a 37.5 meter 3-shot kill range. The only reason people thought it sucked was because it was ugly. It didn't have the aura of the Commando, an AK-47, so it got thrown in the trash. I'm shaking my head as I speak, but also I'd use the Commando and AK any day of the week over the Enfield. And if you want to be able to see me shaking my head, let's get to 100K, because somehow 84% of you watching still aren't subscribed, and only 1% more of you need to sub to get to 100K, which would mean a lot to me. So please hit that button, it's free. I appreciate you a lot, boss. MW3, MK14. The only assault rifle better than the MK14 in Modern Warfare 3 is the ACR 6.8, the greatest weapon in Call of Duty history. But everyone is always talking about the SCAR-L, Type 95, which is amazing, G36C, M4A1, and even the CM901 because of that sexy reload. But the MK14 is without a doubt the second most overpowered AR on the game. It could one-shot out to 25 meters with a headshot, and it two-shot killed out to 49 meters, which meant it took less shots to kill than every single AR out to 49 meters. And you won't be getting any engagements past that range on Call of Duty multiplayer maps. You might think that means it has a bunch of recoil and a slow fire rate, but you'd be wrong. The MK14 had low recoil and a max fire rate of 550 rounds per minute, which means you can use your trigger finger as fast as you want. And it has the same exact movement speed and strafe as all the other ARs. The MK14 has a little bit of a skill gap with the headshots, but it still takes less bullets to kill with or without those headshots, which made it incredibly good even if you didn't know it was the second best AR. Black Ops 2, Cheekum CQB, the first burst SMG in Call of Duty, and it didn't get a lot of love. For some reason, people just couldn't handle a different styled sub, so they immediately tossed it to the side and said it wasn't good. And I've never understood what was so disliked about it. The burst fire shot at 1250 rounds per minute, and it had zero burst delay, meaning you could shoot the weapon at 1250 rounds per minute if you had good timing, making it essentially a Scorpion Evo, which also shot at 1250 rounds per minute, and had the identical damage profile. The only difference was that the Cheekum had less recoil and better range, but took a little bit more skill with maximizing its fire rate. It was a 2-burst kill at all ranges, but inside of 13 meters, it took one headshot to lower it to 1 burst. Also, who didn't like the sound of the Cheekum's burst? This is a sub that most of the community decided to barely use, if at all, but in my friend group, you could hear the sounds of it all around. Ghosts Vepr, a weapon so overlooked that Call of Duty hasn't even brought it back once. What's the first 10 weapons that come to mind when you hear Call of Duty Ghosts? Probably the Honey Badger, MTAR-X, Remington R5, M27 IAR, Bulldog, MSBS, Vector, L115, MR28, and SC2010? Then I could ask you the next 5 and you probably still wouldn't say the Vepr because it simply just didn't get enough love. It could partially have to do with everything killing so fast in Ghosts and the maps being extremely large, making SMGs not the most popular weapon type in the game. But I always thought it was a good weapon because of its nice fire rate of 869 rounds per minute and clean iron sights that only took 3 shots to kill. Normally that's a recipe for success and a weapon people would be drawn to use. On top of this, it had essentially zero horizontal recoil, the least of any SMG in Ghosts. It also had the largest mag size of any SMG in the game. I'll still never understand how it got left behind and never thought of again. Advanced Warfare, SAC-3. And I'm not talking about the single-wielded variants from the supply drops, but the default dual-wielded SAC-3s. I don't think anyone can forget about dual-wielding SMGs, but it was undervalued on how fun they could be to use. You had 2 600 round per minute SMGs shooting together, giving you the effectiveness of 1 1200 round per minute sub, while still having a relatively normal damage of a slow-firing SMG. But there was one big problem that made them not great, and that was the poor hipfire accuracy on a weapon you couldn't aim down sight with. A perplexing decision by the devs, but you could help fix that problem with the laser sight and rapid fire, which put the fire rate up to 750 rounds per minute or 1500 with both firing. No problem, some attachments can't help patch up. While they weren't amazing, it was fun flying around and spraying some akimbo subs. Black Ops 3 XR2. This is a top 5 burst assault rifle of all time, but because the M8A7 was also in BO3, people slept on it a little bit. Most knew it was still great, but didn't use it as much or preferred the M8. So, while it was used a lot, people still don't know how elite it was. It had a 1 burst kill range of 38 meters, which is insane. It had the same damage as the Man of War, but shot faster. And you might say, there's a burst delay that would require great timing to get the best fire rate on it, but you could just hold down the trigger and it would auto fire each burst. That feature is what made many pro players use the XR2 and is why the XR2 is probably better than the Man of War, even though I love that weapon. Pretty much this weapon fried people at all ranges, and even had the fastest up-close time to kill for assault rifles, which is weird considering it is a burst. So just remember, the XR2 is better than the M8A7. Infinite Warfare Atlas. In this game, I feel like I could have said almost any weapon in the game because half of you didn't even play it. COD 4 Remaster was great, but Infinite Warfare got way too much hate. So why did I pick the Atlas? I did it because I was watching a T-Dog video and he was using this weapon, and I swear I'd never heard of this weapon until then. I only knew the Atlas sniper from Advanced Warfare, so I picked the weapon I overlooked and don't really care about. It was an LMG in an advanced movement game, so it doesn't really pair well. I want to know if any of you knew this weapon existed until now. COD World War II, M1928. This is just a Tommy gun with a less fun name, and maybe that's why it didn't get as much love. But I think the reason it suffered was because it was meant for aggressive players because of its fast fire rate and higher recoil. This meant you had to go and always be pushing, but for half of COD World War II's life cycle, they had you playing like an ordinary soldier, which meant pushing wasn't as effective and way more difficult to pull off. But when the game was overhauled, the M1928 became a much better option to use, where it competed with the PPSH as the best close quarters sub. So, while it is pretty bad at mid to long range, it was a great choice to use on all the smaller maps. Every weapon doesn't need to be the best at everything or meta to be fun to use, and the community needs to remember that. BO4 GKS. It was hard to stand out as an SMG at the start of Black Ops 4 with the SOG 9mm, Cordite, and MX9, but it got even worse when they started adding DLC weapons like the VMP, which left the GKS in the background. And what makes it even worse for my guy is that it was built like a weapon people normally like by being a fully automatic weapon with zero recoil. And it was unlocked at level 13, meaning people got it right away, every prestige basically. It was pretty much an M27 from Black Ops 2, but a bit better up close and slightly worse at range because the damage was a bit lower. But people always talk about the M27 being underrated because of how easy it was to use. But I don't think I've heard anyone bring up the GKS. Maybe that's because Black Ops 4 wasn't nearly as popular as Black Ops 2, or maybe it's because it wasn't overpowered like the SOG at the start or the VMP at the end. All I can say is the GKS was always a steady option that you couldn't do bad with, and it shouldn't have been brushed to the side so easily. MW 2019 AUG. It was my favorite weapon to use when this game first launched, but it never seemed to be the top choice for the player base, which is weird because you could build it out to run it like an SMG or like an AR if you use the 5.56 ammo. The duality made it work for every map based on how you set it up. It could even two-shot kill up close with a headshot. Also, it's been in a billion Call of Duties with many different weapon types, originally in MW2 as an LMG, then Black Ops 1 as an AR, then of course an SMG in MW 2019, and then it was a tactical rifle in Cold War as a burst weapon. This weapon is almost on the level of the M4 and MP5 as being synonymous with Call of Duty. It should always be used and remembered. Cold War, FARA 83. I don't think any Warzone player overlooked this AR because it stood out as a broken part of the meta for a while, but in multiplayer, it never got much shine. Maybe it's because it was a DLC weapon added in Season 2 rather than being a launch weapon, so people didn't really care about it, but it had noticeable features where it had the second fastest fire rate for ARs in Cold War, only behind the FFAR, one of the most popular weapons in the game. And it tied for the fastest close range time to kill for ARs with the AK-47, another fan favorite, which makes it even more puzzling that people didn't flock to it. Statistically, until it was nerfed a bit, it was essentially one of the best, if not best, assault rifles in Cold War. But that's the problem with newer Call of Duties. They adjust the weapons and meta so much because that's the only way to get people to use different weapons. Another reason the FAR 83 is cool is because it hasn't been seen in any other COD title, making it unique. While we love seeing guns of the past return, it's also enjoyable to see brand new weapons enter into the franchise. Vanguard BP-50. This is an F2000, the most controversial gun in the original Modern Warfare 2, on if it was good or not. It wasn't, just FYI. Because of every other other gun being so overpowered in that game, but within Vanguard, it didn't get that kind of attention, so no one argued if it was good or not. Maybe that's because it was added in Season 5 of a game that most people just didn't like, but as someone who was still enjoying Warzone a lot, I got that weapon unlocked and leveled it up quickly, which made me quickly find out how good it was. And that shouldn't be shocking because it's a rinse and repeat formula with weapons added to Call of Duty now. Make the new additions OP until we decide to nerf them. It had an incredibly fast fire rate just like the original F2000 from MWIII, but this one had almost no recoil, which is what made it great for multiplayer and Warzone. But don't worry, they eventually nerfed it. COD needs to stop having ridiculously broken weapons every season on purpose, then nerf them just so they can add new ridiculously overpowered weapons next season so they can change their precious meta for their skill-based matchmaking they made for bad players. Okay, let me stop myself before I get into a full rant. The BP-50 was only overlooked because most players weren't on Vanguard anymore when it was added. MW 2022 FTAC Recon. It had a bunch of things working against it. First, it is semi-automatic. Second, it is a battle rifle. And third, it was in the M4 platform of MW2, and no one will care about the semi-automatic battle rifle variant of an M4 over the base M4. It already had a big enough burden of being semi-automatic that made players either love or hate it, and being a battle rifle, the most forgotten about weapon type in modern Call of Duties. Infinity Ward didn't want this weapon to be shown love, which is why they also gave it a default 10-round mag. And you want to know what else they did? They gave it 2 magazine attachments, with one of them changing it to a 5-round mag, and the other one giving it a gigantic 15-round mag. What were they thinking? It generally took 2 shots to kill, was pretty accurate, and you could tap fire it as fast as you wanted basically, but Infinity Ward devs hated this weapon, I'm convinced. MW3 TAC Evolver. I don't think I've ever heard anyone mention this weapon, and it's a shame because I really enjoyed it. This LMG got added in Season 1 of Modern Warfare 3, and I think part of the reason people didn't give it a second look is because there were so many weapons in MW 2022 and MW3 that were called the TAC something or another. It was of course an LMG, which people don't tend to gravitate towards, but this gun had a 100-round mag and barely any recoil, which made it fun and easy to use. The main issue was the sprint to fire delay it had, but what else do you expect when you're using an LMG? And there's plenty of attachments to help that, unlike older Call of Duties. If you're ever playing MW3 again, just give the TAC Evolver a chance and you won't be disappointed. BO6 TR2. Probably half of you haven't even used this marksman rifle because people only care about the DM10 in this weapon class, and I'm only choosing it here because I have one friend who swears the TR2 is great and made everyone he knows use it and level it up. And it is better than the DM10 in a few categories with aim down sight speed, bullet velocity, fire rate, and movement speed. But overall, it isn't actually better than the DM10 because bullet velocity is useless on the tiny Black Ops 6 maps, and movement isn't a big deal for marksman rifles because people usually don't move much with them. And the most important stats are damage, recoil, and time to kill, which the DM10 wins in all of. But please try the TR2 out to make my friend happy. And if you want to know what Call of Duty weapons made the community happy, check out the community's top 25 guns of all time. Click here. I know you'll enjoy it. Peace.